Hey, everybody. Okay, we'll get started. It's lovely to see you all joining the room. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Foundational Standards Team opportunity to present everybody about the Ontario Marginalization Index. There's been the index has been around for a while, but there was a big update done for the 2021 census. So we wanted to talk you through what that update looked like. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining us for our first virtual workshop. We're going to be doing an evaluation at the end, and I really do ask that you complete the evaluation in its entirety if you can. It's going to take a lengthy amount of time. I'm kidding. It's 7 very quick questions, but we would really like it if you could take the time to do the evaluation because we'd like to learn more about how you would like to do workshops moving forward. If you liked the virtual, if you would like in person or other topics that you would like to learn about. So if you could take time to do that, that would be awesome. And like I mentioned, if we are together for 90 minutes, if we were in person, I would, at this point in time, give you the Wi-Fi code and the washroom code, but I don't need to do that. So you guys can, at your leisure, if you need something, you can hop up and get it. We are going to do a more formal presentation. I'm very pleased to let you know that Mohammed Karpouche is also working with me on this presentation, as well as our most amazing Letitia Crombie, who is doing the background tech work and will be pulling up polls and managing the chat and any questions that you have. So thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure I introduced the awesome team that's been working behind the scenes on this. So I just wanted to mention that we are going to do a bit of a presentation, and then we're going to go into a bit of a session. And not sure how many people were joining us today. We were going to do breakout sessions, but we're actually going to trial whiteboard. So we'll do a whiteboard session with me towards the end, and that will give you some experience with that type of software as well. So if there are not any other questions, I would going to just start to acknowledge that we are on the Treaty 20 Mississauga and Chippewa Nations. This is called the Williams Treaties First Nations, and we know that that includes Hiawatha, Curve Lake, Alderville, Scugog, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Islands First Nations. And I really am thankful to bring forward the land acknowledgement. And actually, I just wanted to share, for those of you that may not have read the book Braiding Sweetgrass, I highly recommend it. They do talk about, the author talks about Thanksgiving addresses in the book. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just put in the chat for you, and you can check it out. The author does actually explain what the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address looks like. And I think given that we're about to break and head off to a Thanksgiving weekend, it is important to, as part of our reconciliation efforts, to think about what would be Thanksgiving or giving thanks in all different types of cultures. And so, yeah, take a read through if you like. That's the Thanksgiving address there, from the book Braiding Sweetgrass. And I think it is also important for us to acknowledge today that we are talking about data in this webinar, and data has often been used. Data has been a source of power and control over First Nation populations, and so we do want to acknowledge that throughout this webinar. And I want to commit my efforts and excited to hear the organization's efforts towards OCAP. And if you're not familiar with OCAP, that's ownership, control, access, and possession. And that is a tool to support strong information governance on the path to First Nation data sovereignty. And that is some work that is happening. We are looking at rolling out, adopting the OCAP principles and ensuring our policies are reflective of OCAP principles at PPH. So I do want to acknowledge that. So let's move on, shall we? That was a bit of a welcome. I did want to share the welcome and the land acknowledgement, but I also thought I want to acknowledge that we are in a we are about to launch into a long weekend. Many people might be thinking wholeheartedly about work today. You might not, and that's okay. But maybe you have a feeling. Maybe you're thinking about your Thanksgiving meal, and you would maybe relate to picture number 9. I'm not sure. Maybe you're thinking about you're decorating. You're decorating for your Thanksgiving, and you're thinking more about 4. Um, I also want to acknowledge that there may be a few of you in the crowd that are so excited about this workshop that you are number 8 and saying, thank you, Foundational Standards, for running this workshop. Does anybody want to put their number in the chat or just leave it there? I'm an 8. Or maybe people are 3 and they're like, yay, Foundational Standards, you're putting this on. Oh, we got some 4s. 2. 2. Do we elaborate on the 2? Oh, yes. I do really appreciate number 5. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we might all hit a 5 anytime throughout our day, and that's okay. Because that's just kind of what happens. Okay, well, thank you for that. And if your rating changes throughout the day, feel free to edit your chat, because it's fun that you can do that, or delete, as we learned earlier today. So feel free to delete if you really don't want the number on record. Um, Anyways, moving on. We're going to cover off the agenda just so you know what's coming ahead. So we've covered off welcome. We're going to talk about a background. So there was some very important prerequisite homework for this workshop. So we're going to do a very slight overview, but I know all of you did that homework, so we won't have to go into too much detail. We're going to talk about the maps. So you're actually going to see the maps. If you haven't seen the maps, then no problem. We're going to show you. And then the important part about the maps is we look at the Ontario marginalization maps, but then we link it to data. So how does that impact our work? And we want to link it to data. There are limitations, of course, so we'll talk about those. And then there's other products that you can use. You don't have to use the Ontario marginalization product, but it is quite handy and supported by Public Health Ontario. So that's an important disclaimer, I think. And then we're going to turn it over to me. So sorry, 2 to 6 is with Mohammed, and number 7 is back with me. And we're going to talk about how we're going to use all this stuff. And then we'll wrap up. So again, we're going to be a hard stop at 2:30. We respect your time and we won't go over that. So really, please ask questions. Please raise your hand if you don't want to just jump in there and ask a question. And we're going to try to make this as useful as possible this session. Okay, so starting off, we're going to just have a poll to gauge, and be honest, it's okay, we're all friends. If you can answer the poll, if you did get a chance to watch the prerequisite webinar, that would be helpful. It would just allow us to gauge where people are at in the room. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see the bars moving. The bars are shifting. I think no is winning. Okay, fair. Fair enough. That's good to know. So some of the information we cover today might be a bit confusing for the folks that were not able to get through the webinar or watch it in its entirety. So the link, so in the meeting request that you accepted to attend, there was information in there about watching it beforehand, and there's a link in there. So use that link, maybe check it out afterwards. We also have a resource slide in the presentation. If the webinar isn't for you, that's okay. There's a user guide. There's a frequently asked questions. So there's a few other ways that you can learn a little bit about the background of the index. Okay, thank you for answering that poll. So then what I think we'll do is, if we haven't had folks had a chance to watch the webinar, I think it's great if we could launch poll number 2 and just have a better idea about what you know about the index. How familiar are you with it? Okay, we see some votes coming in there. Give it another second. I see the bar is moving. As soon as you press submit, I think you can see the results. Okay. So at least everybody on the call today is familiar with it. So that's good to know. And we've got somewhat familiar, so that's great. So hopefully the very familiars on the call today could really chime in when we're brainstorming the use. And why I think it's great that we're going to have a larger group session doing the brainstorming is that some teams may be more advanced with their use of this tool and other teams may not. And I hope everybody can learn a little bit about that. So that is great. Thank you. All right, I am going to turn it over to Mohammed, who is going to share with you a little bit, just a snippet of what was covered in the Public Health Ontario webinar about the index.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Janet. I hope you can hear me very well. I'm a little bit sick today, but can you hear me well?
It's a little quiet, but I think we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, marginalization index or unmarged background. So in a couple of slides, I'm going to give you a brief background of the marginalization index, the indicator used, the data, a little bit of the methodology without going, being very technical. Yeah, let's go to the next one, Janet. Or I can do that. Oh, I can do that then. Okay, so OnMarge index was created originally by a researcher at the Center of Urban Solution, Sun Hospital and Public Health Ontario. So it's an index that is area level dissemination area. I don't know everyone is familiar with dissemination area, but the dissemination area is about its a location with 400 to 700 person. It's an area level index showing the difference in marginalization between areas, as I mentioned. So, and it allows users to understand equities in health and social behavioral outcomes, either between population groups or between geographical area. So the concept or the theoretical concept frameworks behind this is we have 42 variables coming from census. We want to regroup them in something called dimension using a statistical technique called factor analysis. So we have your input for the variables, census variables, and we get at the end for dimension using not 42 but 18 variables only. And you can see for the first one, it's 7 variables, the second one is 6 variables, the third one 2, and the last one a 3 variable. So that's the concept, that's the idea behind the whole index. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, 4 dimensions, which they are a linear combination of 18 input variables that independently explain the greatest possible variance in the data. What I mean by that is every indicator coming from census explain a little bit information. So if we put them together, it's not necessarily going to explain 100%, but something around 80% of the information. I mean, I asked PHO to give us an estimation of how much of the variance was explained. They were not able to share that, or they forgot to share that with me yet. Next point, please. So each dimension can be thought as a separate index with a standardized factor score that goes from -2 to 7. For example, the material resources dimension, that's one of them. As -2 is the low marginalization and 7 as the high marginalization. So that's one way. Once you've done the factor analysis, you got scores. That's one way to look. But what Pichu did is something more simple. Next point, please. So instead of having scores like -2 to 7, it doesn't really mean something. So what the paper did is, instead of that, we are going to create quantiles from Q1 to Q5, as Q1 represent the least marginalized example for material resources, and Q5 the most marginalized example for you, fewer material resources. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, 4 dimensions at the end. I am going to go through this 4 dimensions, give you a little bit of the meaning, what measures, what information we can get from there. So in 2021, PPH, as Janet mentioned, they updated their analysis. The data that I used, so it was 2021. Prior to that, it was 2016, 18, and 26. The name of the dimension had a certain name, but for 2021, they decided they are going to change the name of the dimension. So the first dimension I am going to talk about is household unwilling, formerly called residential instability. This dimension is related to family and neighborhood stability and cohesiveness. Next point, please. So the concept or the idea behind this is stable neighborhoods promote cohesive communities, which is provide a positive, socially supportive environment that promote resiliency, mental health, and well-being. The second dimension that was previously called material deprivation. I know for those that are familiar with the marginalization index, they probably know the material deprivation, but now it's called material resources. This measure is connected to poverty and refers to the inability for individuals and community to have access and attain basic material needs relating to housing, food, clothing, and education. And this indicator, the indicators that we actually included in this dimension are indicators that measures the income, quality of housing, education, attainment, and family structure characteristic. The next one is the age and labor force, and previously called dependency. This measures this dimension measures relates to the impact of disability and dependence. It refers to a real level concentration of people who do not have income from employment, including older adult children, adults whose work is not compensated, and those unable to work due to disability. So, and this dimension is also connected to the economic vitality of the community and the ways in which resources and infrastructure are allocated. For example, ageism can result in fewer community resources made available, reduction in quality of healthcare, and social exclusion. The last one, which is called for previously ethnic concentration, you see they changed the name for this one too. Racialized groups includes people who experience differential treatment based on race, ethnicity, language, religion, or culture. The research has shown that both structural racism and anti-immigrant discrimination have a profound impacts in individual, community, and population. So this dimension, it's a really interesting because we don't have a lot of information about racism and also immigration except for census. But putting it this way, it may have a value more just taking one indicator at a time. Next slide, please. Okay, so we covered actually the unmarsh, the concept behind it, and the indicators or the data, the indicators used for, and the dimension that it was built using that statistical technique. Now, the big question is, okay, we have all this, then how we are going to use this? How OnMarch can be used, our liver, for example, by public health units? Pages suggest that there are multiple use, and marginalization index can be used for planning and needs assessment, can be used for monitoring of inequities, resource allocation, and also for research. All right, we will talk about this more, a little bit in more detail in the next slides. Next slide, please. Okay, now I am going to share my screen with you. Janet, if you don't mind, you can share the link to this map with everyone if you want to follow me while I'm doing the demo on the maps. I'm just going to share my screen for a second. Can you see the map? Can you see my screen?
We can see your desktop, but not the maps.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I done that. Share. Hmm. There we go. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yep, it's the map.
Yep.
Perfect. So this is the new marginalization index with the updates from 2021. Not only they updated the data, but also they enhanced the platform and the maps. So the first thing that you can see on my left side, you will have everything that you need to know about the user guide and marginalization index, and also the data sources used here. So that was in the previous version, but I think they just added more information about this this time. The other thing in the same side, you would have more legend about the boundaries. You can go by health unit, you can go by health region, or you can go by a local health integration network boundaries. At the same time, this is something new. So you would have all your 4 dimensions, and it goes from 1, as I mentioned, with quantiles, low marginalization to high marginalization. And we have material resources quantile, racialized and newcomers population. We have age and labor in household and willing quantiles. Once you have that, um, in the bottom down here, you would see all the data that actually previous data or previous index using 2006, 2011, 16, and 21. When you open the link that Janet shared with you, you would have a map like this for all Ontario. And where you need to go is on your right hand on this called layers. And then you are going to choose the first one that we can choose is material resources, just right here, just like this. And then what we need to do is we are going to zoom to look at Peterborough, just right here. Yeah, just going to make sure that we have the boundaries, and yeah, we have all this. And the other thing that was added, if you were able to zoom to Peterborough, just right here in the center, you can select health unit from here. And you will see what's going to happen once you click on Peterborough Public Health, which is right here. You will have a graph or chart on your right hand with the number of DAs for each dimension, how many DAs are in those quantiles. For example, for material sources, I would say that 28 are in quantile 1, 49 in quantile 2, and so on, and 50 in quantile 5. In comparison with, if you go to the second one, the newcomer population, you would see the majority of the DAs are in the first, the second, and the third. So that's something new, because sometimes when you look at the map, you have a lot of DAs. So, but you don't know, like just by visual like this, you don't know how many they are in quantile one and how many they are in the other quantile. So this way you have this chart to know actually how many DAs are less marginalized and how many they are most marginalized for each dimension. Right. So that's what I have to show you. I encourage everyone to take time and look at this when you have time. And of course, if you have any question or a comment or anything that you would like to share or to discuss, I would be happy to chat about your questions or your comments. There we go. Thank you. I'm just gonna get back to you, Janet. There we go.
Okay, great. Just take a second and we'll load back up the presentation. Okay, it's just loading there. Okay. So does that put us, are you through these slides now, Mohammed? Mohammed, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, the next slide is the poll number 3, please.
You want poll number 3?
Yeah.
Perfect. Poll number 3. There we go. So this is a bit of an evaluation question, you're probably wondering. So we just want to gauge where people are at, how many dimensions are in the index. Okay. Perfect.
Excellent.
All right. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janice. So in the next couple slides, I am going to do my best to, like, after I give you all this background and the maps and beautiful maps and what PPH, I think the most important part of for me for using for marginalization index is how we can apply this local data. So the idea, the question is how marginalization can be applied in public health. And I'll share with you some examples that are from PHO shared with us and some that are from other health, and they use the marginalization index. A common need, on marginalization in public health is linking the health data. What I mean by health data, all those health indicators. You can choose wherever comes to your mind, indicator, ED visit, hospitalization, COPD, food insecurity, any data, health data, and how to link that health data to the socio-demographic characteristic. The majority of the health data comes with age, gender, sex, but that's all. So linking the marginalization index to health data will allow us to do more and better understand health and address health inequities in Ontario, for example. So in this slide, what you see is the age standardized rate of 2 or more chronic condition rate in the neighborhood of in the community of Toronto by neighborhood, and you can see that the darker shades indicates worse health status. We can see that that's in the east and a little bit of the west. The rate are higher than in the middle. Okay, it looks like Diana is seeing only the agenda.
My screen is showing slide 16. Is that correct or?
Yep, slide 16 is up here, but what other people see?
I see 16 as well.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
right. Okay, so you can, because I'm in present live, you can click through the slides at your end as well, but you'll notice a little bar that says sync with presenters. So if you want to go back to where we are, you have to make sure you press sync with presenters to be able to stay with us. So but you can but you can click back. If there was something you wanted to look at, by all means, you can click back and forward because we are in presentation live mode.
Okay.
Oh, no disruption. It's a great question.
Okay, perfect. So as I was saying, in this slide, what you see is a health indicator with the rate of health indicator, which is in this case 2 or more chronic condition, age standardized, and you can see the rate on a map and those with DAs. And as I was saying, the DAs in the east of Toronto are more higher than, so we can see that. But now, in the next slide, how I am going to talk about another indicator, which is in this case premature mortality, and link that health data or health indicator to marginalization index. Okay, then using marginalization index, we can assign for each patient or a case, in this case, we can assign a DA and link to socioeconomic marginalization where that person lives. The patient, once they are assigned the DA using the postal code, then we will be able to assign a quantile, to that case, that patient, or that person. And here I am just linking the marginalization. I'm linking the marginalization quantiles, and then aggregate the quantiles and calculate the rate for each quantile. As you can see in the slide, the rate for the low marginalization, it's lower than the fifth quantile with high marginalization. So once I calculated the rate for all the quantiles, I will be able to calculate measures that will help me to understand or to see the gap. Measures like rate difference. The rate difference is basically the difference between the low and high. The rate ratio is a ratio between the low marginalization, which is quantile 1, and quantile 5, which is high marginalization. The other two measures, they are calculated by PHO. We don't have really the data to calculate that, but they're willing to share the data with us, and we can do that for our data as well. At the end, this slide shows that the gap between the high and marginalized, we can measure that, we can calculate that, and come with an interpretation. For example, you can see in the slide, premature mortality rates are 3.6 times higher in the most marginalized quantile compared to the least marginalized quantile. And this interpretation, and this information, that's what that is missing. That's the gap in terms of our data or our analysis. Linking that health data to the marginalization index will allow you to make this kind of interpretation. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, PHO, they have really they did a great job, and they picked a few indicators, health indicators, and they did all this analysis using the marginalization index. Janet is sharing with you the link to this, but I am going to share again my screen, and then I'll do a demo for you on this. Okay, here we go. So normally the link would take you to this page if you're able. I'm going to give you an example about alcohol attributable hospitalization. Once you are in this page, you have an arrow, a drop list here that you can choose all the indicators that page you that the analysis for 2016. You have to mention that they are going to update their data for all this indicator for 2021 soon. So I will, once we am aware of the updates are done, I'll share that with all the staff at that time. So let's choose an indicator from here and explain how actually it does work. Like if we take the chronic disease mortality, so what do you have in here, what Pedro put for us? You can select the indicator from here, all the mortality, cardiovascular disease, ischemic heart disease, all those indicators here. And if you click on the little arrow, you would see that there's age in your eyes, both sex, for male and female, and so on. And also you have the years. You can pick up the years that you're looking for. And just beside it here, so you have the map. If you can click on Peterborough, this is where Peterborough is just right here in the middle here, just right here. If you hover on the map, you would see where it's Peterborough, and also you can see for Peterborough the trends. For example, if I hover again on Peterborough, you would see the rate from 2004 to 14. The most important thing is where we come to this little table here, I can go and select Peterborough. So a Peterborough, you would see that what is the rate, but actually you can compare that to Ontario or any other health unit. So you would see that are we higher than Ontario or not? So if it says no, then there is no difference. You can compare to other health units. Just from here, for example, I can add, and as soon as I add Ontario, you will see that a little line in red, see that actually between Peterborough and Ontario, there is no big difference right here. So what else I can show you here? Yeah, so what I'm saying is you have all this data that you can go and explore, even if it's 2016, 2021 is coming. I think this work, we don't need to do this work at a local level. So you can go and explore all those indicators and link it to the marginalization index data and analysis. The other thing I should mention, you can actually download the data. There is a technical note that explains all the methodology and data source use, and also you can pick up actually by public health, the geography, public health unit, or local health integration network right here. So it's something to explore if you want to be more familiar. So this, great analysis are done by Pedro and they're ready to use by us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going back to the next slide. Actually, we're going to pull number 4. Perfect. Okay, gonna go to the next slide, please, Janet. So the last slide that I would like, or last example that I would like to share with you, is just from our neighbors, Simcoe, where they linked the enhanced 18-month baby visit rate to the material deprivation dimension. And this is something that actually in Peterborough we can easily do. We just need to put the process in place. But anyhow, the slide that you can see that you see the quantiles 1 to 5, and you can see that the rates or the proportion in the least deprived are higher than the most deprived in terms of the rate the proportion of visits, enhanced 18 well baby visits. And the difference, it's significant in a way that I think there is a 20% difference between the Q1 and Q5. So this is a really a simple example that other health are already doing, and this is something that it can easily done by us in Peterborough Public Health. So yeah, that's the last example that I have. And next slide, please. And so, as you know, methodology, statistical analysis, data, there is always limitation. It's not perfect, but it doesn't mean that actually it's not working or it's... So there are some limitations coming with the marginalization index. Now, so the first one is that does not address all form of marginalization in a way that a Black population, Indigenous population, women, LGBTQ experience and marginalization in ways that may not be captured by the marginalization index. The second limitation goes with this. Janet, please. As I explained, the marginalization index uses census data, which is a 5 years. So it uses the data is refreshed only every 5 years. So what happened between those 5 years, we will never know. That's unfortunate. And also, not everyone is counted because of the data suppression of Indigenous reserve, undercounted of Indigenous population of reserve, temporary foreign agriculture workers, and people living in a congregate setting. Next slide, please. There's also ecological fallacy in a way that some people within a neighborhood are not represented by the neighborhood average. And this is actually it's a risk, but it's not. It's a lower risk when the DA level marginalization index. What they're trying to say with this limitation is, if you go by individual, you can use this marginalization index for individual SS, but you can use it for the DA rather than individual. Next slide, please. In this slide, I just want to mention some other indices that are available. I mean, they are kind of similar to what marginalization index, even the marginalization index at Ontario, it's for Ontario only. So the one that is very similar is Canadian Index for Multiple Deprivation. It's an area-based index used in 2016. That's the last version, and measures 4 keys dimension as well. And the dimensions are not dimension of deprivation, and they are not named similar to. They are named residential instability, economic dependency, situation of vulnerability, and ethnocultural composition. So again, the indicator used, we don't know if they used 18 indicator or they used more than that, but it's done at the national level. And I don't know how this can be actually used for local data or for local, health unit in Ontario. And next point, please. The other one that I think it's different. It's an index that is actually profiles different things than the marginalization index. It's the social risk index. It's a tool that is actually with the objective or the purpose of providing a general picture of potential risk in the community. It contains 9 variables. only, and it has such as average household income, employment rate, low and parent family, so on and so on. And it does profile socioeconomic context in the communities. In the next slide. Yeah, we got 2 questions. Back to you, Janet.
So we'll just pause for a moment. There was a lot of information shared there in a very short period of time. So just thought we would, before we launch into thinking through how we would use this at as part of our work, do you have any questions about you would want to ask about some of the information we covered or questions of clarification? And feel free to put it in the chat or unmute your mic. We actually have a really nice number. We were expecting quite a large number on the call today, but I think it's quite a nice number. We can make this an informal session. Yeah, Deanna, go for it.
Thanks. Yeah, this one's easier to say than type. I'm just wondering when you would recommend using the slope index of inequality or the relative index of inequality measures over the more simple rate difference and rate ratio. Like, what scenarios are those more complex ones good for?
That's a good question. I would use the simple one, the difference or the ratio. If if we have 4 points of data, for example, 21, 20 until 26, I would use the slope as well. If I'm using, for example, if I'm looking for 21, 26 in difference, in this case, I would use maybe the simple measures. Yeah.
Sorry, Mohammed, can you say, so
Go ahead.
if you're just wanting to compare between 2 years, like 2016 and 2021, you
Yeah.
would use the simple measures, I think
Yeah.
I heard you say. And sorry, what was the first part?
The first part is the calculation for the slope, and the other one is it's more complicated in a way that includes regression, more statistical technique that to actually understand the interpretation when you get the number. That's why if it's just 2 points of time, I would use the simple measures as the difference or the rate ratio.
Right.
That's what
So
I'm saying. Yeah.
when would be a scenario when the more complicated ones would be useful?
That would be if we try to if we have more than 2 points, for example, in marginalization index. If you're comparing between 2021 and 26, I believe that's the first time the index was developed. I would use the slope. But if it's just comparing 2016 and 2021, I would use just the simple difference.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's a great point, Serena. Serena put in the chat, we use this in conjunction with other data to make a case for the need for NFP. So when we get into our brainstorming session, it would be great if you can add that to a sticky note. So yeah, that's great. Any other questions? And feel free however, yeah, I think I like how you're right, Deanna, that was easier to say than type. Okay. So you're still thinking, and that's okay, because we're going to enter into a bit of a working session now to talk about how we can use it or how we have used this data. So Serena, that's a great a segue into our session. And because what we want to do is think about how we can apply the Public Health Ontario um, strategies or ideas on how you would use this data. So for this session, I was just curious if we could do a little bit of a hands up to see who on the call today has used the whiteboard function in the Microsoft products. Okay. Okay, good. Anybody else? Hands up if you've used the Microsoft whiteboard function. Okay, so we have about half and half. Okay. So I'm going to give you a quick demo. So the benefit of this session is we're trying to use some technology so we can think about learning, doing some virtual learning for offering these in the future. So so today we're going to look at whiteboard, using a whiteboard, and I'll explain the activity. So everybody will have access to the whiteboard. So I'm going to show you the whiteboard first. I'll show you some features within the whiteboard. Anybody who's used a whiteboard before, if I've missed something, please jump in, and because actually you might teach me something too. And then, so everybody will have access to a whiteboard, and then we will post ideas or ways you've used it or ways you want to use it on the whiteboard. And so that we'll be able to see across the organization what's happening. And that will also allow our team to collect themes of how people are using it or how they want to use it. And then it will help us with our planning. So we're going to jump into the whiteboard. And again, we're going to be thinking about those Public Health Ontario ways to use the index. That's around looking at planning and doing assessments, monitoring inequalities, resource allocation and decision making, and then research. So let's think about how we could use that. So just give me a second. I'm going to share my screen so that I'm going to show you first what you'll be able to see, because once I launch the whiteboard, everybody will be zooming around on the screen. So I'm going to show you first what you're going to see. Okay, so this is the screen, and you're probably saying, what is on that screen? It's way too small. So when we enter the whiteboard, you will see down here on the bottom right-hand corner some zoom features. And right now it's at 9%. So I have a very large whiteboard open because we're going to be spanning through the whiteboard. So you see my little mouse, and if I click on the mouse and I drag and drop, I can drag the whiteboard. So as we're starting on the left in our activity, we're going to move to the right. So you'll be able to drag your mouse and drag the whiteboard. But the beauty is on your side, you can make it as big or small as you want it. So if you forgot your glasses today, that's okay, because you can make it as big. You can zoom in if you want. You can go even closer over here. This appears very small lettering. So you can go in as close as you want. So here's 33%, so we can actually read the question. Or maybe you want it further out so you can see what's coming. So you can do that. So then, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the question. And actually, Serena, you've prompted me here. I want to make a little edit because how can we, and I think we should also say how can, and can I say are we using, using, there we go. So I made a little edit to the whiteboard. So when you get access to the whiteboard, we're going to look at this question, and all I want is to generate ideas. Don't even think about the 4 predetermined areas of Public Health Ontario. So this is called a sticky note. I've put in a bunch of sticky notes here. Just feel free to grab one, okay? And then you click on it, and it says type here. So you have to click the little type, edit text. There it comes up, your little icon. And let's say you're going to you're going to use PHO snapshots during operational planning. Okay. So you've got there's your sticky note right there. And you'll be able to see if I scroll in, you can see Janet Dawson wrote that sticky note. So we're gonna jump into the whiteboard, and you can just start adding your ideas to the sticky note. And then what we'll do is we'll just move them over into some of the categories so we can get an idea of where people are really spending their energies, and if we should help support some of the energies in the other bubbles. Okay? Does that, and I should also feature, for those folks that haven't used the whiteboard, you also have some reactions down here at the bottom. You can add your own sticky notes if you're not liking the ones I've pre-populated, or you can give a reaction. So say somebody has added a sticky and you're like, that is definitely what I'm going to be using it for. Feel free to put your reaction on the sticky note, and there you can see my reaction. Okay. The other option too, I believe, is see the sticky notes. They also have a little thumbs up there. You can also just do a thumbs up right on the sticky. So there's lots of opportunities to give your feedback on all the stickies that are going on the board. Okay. Any questions about whiteboard from the folks that have used it or have not? Okay. Well, let's get into it here then. Okay, so I'm calling up the whiteboard, and you should have access to it shortly. Oh, and I forgot to also give you a very important, okay, so we're all zooming around the board there. So you can, in the little wheel at the top right hand, you can, that's the settings menu. If you want, you can click the little toggle that says collaborative cursors if you want to shut off the collaborative cursors. Collaborative cursors allows you to see which cursor is for which person. Okay, so if you don't want to see all those zooming around the board, then just yeah. So if you want to grab a sticky, you can scroll in to as far as you want to see what people are saying and put in there how you've used it. So Serena, what you put in the chat, that's awesome. You could put into a sticky. Oh, we've moved some stickies. That's okay. There's an undo button. Don't worry. There's always an undo button. And so if you want to just grab a sticky and type how you think you want to use this. And as you're doing that, I just want to highlight that. So planning and assessment, I think, will be our main one. But I think what's important is the monitoring is very important for evaluating. And so thinking about what are some of the things over the next year you really should evaluate and take a look at. And you can look at past data, and you could look at the new 2021 data. And as Mohammed mentioned, the snapshots are going to be updated, so we're very anxious for that. Resource allocation, so that again might be thinking about how when programs are talking about budgets and you're working with your manager on budget allocation, thinking about maybe where you should spend, the team can spend more of the dollars, and also around decision making. So another great example that I read in the FAQ is for organizations to use the maps to predict the kinds of health and social services that will be needed in a particular area. So that also would allow you to set up specific programs in certain areas. Okay, so we're populating. Just grab a sticky, populate your sticky. So if you we'll give about five or so minutes for this activity, and then we'll take a look at some of them. And if you're sitting on a sticky, you might have to click off of it for your words to show up. Okay, so no problem. See you later. Okay, great. We're seeing some ideas coming forward. How about ways you want to use it? Is there any research happening? Does anybody have any research on the go in their programs? How are people doing? I've been adding some here. I like the reactions. That's good. Okay. Got some people still writing. It's good. So, I'm just. I was thinking. I was thinking we could change the color of the stickies, but I don't think I can. Does anybody know how to change the color of the sticky?
You just click on it and then click the yellow circle to change it to whatever color you want.
But even in ones that have writing,
Yep.
not giving me that option. On the ones without writing, it's giving me that option, but with writing, it's not. Oh, it is now. That one's not. Okay, good. Okay, so here's another whiteboard to give you a sense of using the whiteboard. For the stickies that you added, if you have used it, the on-marg index, and your idea is something that you have done, leave it orange or yellow. If your idea is something you want to do, can you make your sticky pink?
I don't think you can make it pink if there's a heart on it, layering two things. Yeah.
Is that what it is? Okay. So that's what it is. Yes, you got to move the heart. Okay. Okay. How are people doing? I don't see anybody else writing. Okay. So let's take a peek here, what we got. So it's so we've got the top one there, use Public Health Ontario snapshots during operational planning. So that I think is definitely 100% an option that we need to use during operational planning this time. So taking a look at the data maps for your health indicator, looking at the snapshots, even if they're not updated, I think that would be super helpful. And then using the data for the 2021 what's available. And then if there was any specific data requests, just making sure you get those in early to foundational standards so that we can plan using that. So that's good. Does anybody have anything they want to share about that one? Ways you've used the data in the past during operational planning and that you think would be helpful to share with everybody? Okay, so this one, the next one, use data to formulate recommendations for the advocating for health and official plans report. So again, I would put that more in assessment because what we did was we used the on-marg data, we looked at the on-marg data, and and then we had data in the report that we did. These are, for those of you that are not familiar, these are reports that made recommendations to the city, and then we issued a county one, and it made recommendations to the county. And so we pulled data and put it directly in the report, but then it helped formulate the policy recommendations that we were making to the city and the county. Okay, so one way we could use this is to evaluate current programs. Yep. Yep. So something that you could put in your operational plans. If there's a program that you have been running for a while and you think that it would be helpful to conduct some evaluations, again, that's something Foundational Standards can help you with, thinking through what that evaluation would look like. And then using the on-march data is an important evaluation tool. Using data to determine the kinds of health and social services that may be needed in the area. Well, I had to put that because that is over here. So I'm moving them as we go. I'm putting them into resource allocation. Great. Okay. We've got evaluating what is happening in our region over time. Perfect. So that's very important for population health assessment, as well as evaluating the, where did that one go? There was evaluating what's happening across a geography. Exactly. So if we had a specific geography and we wanted to look at what was happening, say in Trent Lakes, we could look at the dissemination area for that, for what includes Trent Lakes. Okay, so this one, identifying which populations are struggling with mental health so we can target interventions. Perfect. That was Kate. Thank you. So again, that would come into planning. Anything you wanted to speak about that, Kate?
Just that it would be really helpful to be able to do. Like, for example, when we're thinking about parents of children who are experiencing like perinatal mood disorder, to be able to understand more if it's newcomers who have the highest, or which, like if it's more newcomers or those who are experiencing more marginalization would be helpful.
Exactly. Right. And then this one as well, I think this is you, yep. Finding out which areas of our community are struggling most with healthy, excuse me, I knew that was coming, healthy child development. So yeah, that's a great indicator. And then also, I'm sure you're familiar with the city. City uses the social risk index though, but the city has their early development index. Right. Okay, awesome, Deanna, to identify priority schools. Do you want to speak about that one a little bit?
Sure. Just to say that, I mean, we do use some data right now to identify priority schools, but it's the Education Opportunities Index, which is a canned analysis from the Ministry of Ed, but it only uses 3 of the census variables, whereas OnMarge uses 18 variables. So it would be a bit more specific, but we have to do the analysis. So I would love if we could do that. I think it would give us a bit more specificity.
So I see this fitting in two areas, right? It's a planning activity, but it's also a resource allocation activity, because what I'm thinking is that you will then decide some of the programs that you would put into those priority schools. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really great to see in the webinar that PHO did, they used prioritizing schools as the example for resource allocation. So that was great.
That's great. Yeah, that's really good. So we're going to wrap up here shortly. We're just going to move a couple more, but so we've got demonstrate need. So we've got for ACES, that's in the planning bubble. Erica, you had, this is really good. Compare local and provincial data to prepare NFP. No, sorry, I apologize. To determine underserved communities or populations to tailor the food literacy programming. So that's work that you did and you looked at the maps?
Yeah, we have looked at the maps before, but kind of piggybacking on Deanna's comments too. I think it's just a more clear, nice, concise way to look at the snapshots. But will help us. I think a lot of us are running on limited capacity right now, and it's important to be able to articulate clearly why, and especially when we have lots of requests and lots of interest. And we are really trying to be very strategic and intentional. So I think that will continue, but this has been helpful to just understand it better. And I think to provide clarity to those who work alongside as well.
Yeah, it's great. So this is great. So there's a couple in here. There's more on the resource allocation than I thought. And so this NFP one that Serena has produced, it's definitely it's an assessment, but then it goes into resource allocation, and NFP is definitely like a resource allocation. So I'm putting some of those there because I think the end goal was then to create the program and allocate resources to fund it. So I think that's great. So I think with the time, we'll go back to our presentation and wrap up. But as you can see, some of the, oh yeah, you did offer that. You offered a second one, Serena. That's great. So yeah, there's a lot of them that kind of fall in the planning bubble. But then once you see the results, then you can go into the decision making of how you're going to allocate your resources to then, change up your programming and maybe give more to where you're seeing some of the issues or more marginalization. Monitor changes over time. Great, great one. Okay. Any last comments or thoughts on the whiteboard? Folks that hadn't used the whiteboard before, was it okay? Okay, one thumb.
Yeah, it was
I
good. It was different. I liked it. I like how
Okay,
you can
that's
move all
good.
those post-it notes and stuff around. I've never tried that like that, so that was great.
Yeah. So you guys are doing a team planning day. And you're virtually that day, you can pull up the whiteboard and you can use Post-its and you can move it around. And the other thing that I really like about the whiteboard function is when you go into your Office 365, you have a little whiteboard app. It's one of the Microsoft apps, and this whiteboard will be saved in there for you. So you can continue to add ideas. I'm going to do some theming and I'm going to move stuff around after the meeting. But then people that are going to watch this session will also be able to add their ideas. So it's a living whiteboard. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the presentation very briefly and wrap up. And I think we have lots of ideas of how we can use but still lots of brainstorming left to do, and we can think more about this in operational planning about how we want to use the on-marge data maps and if there's any data requests that you would have to make. Okay, so you may still have questions. So for those of you that weren't able to watch the webinar, I strongly recommend that you get a chance to watch it. They do, as Deanna mentioned, they do have a couple of different examples that they offer. And I think it's always nice to see how other people are using some of the data. Mohammed also shared a Simcoe Muskoka example, so you can explore that on their website. Mohammed, I'm not sure if you have a chance, you can put it in the chat even after this session, that link to Simcoe Muskoka if they wanted to look at that data a little closer. So
yeah, I will.
Thank you. So I've linked for you in the resources, you have the link to the maps, you have a link to the snapshots, which again are not updated with the 2021 data, but will be soon. That's what we've been told. There's a user guide. So for those of you that like to read and think about it, user guide is really, really helpful. Also the webinar, you can just look at the slides for the webinar, or you can watch the recording. And then there is also the FAQ, which I found very helpful to think through how to use the data. And really all I can encourage you to do is get into the maps and play around. You can't break it. So play around with the data, play around with some of the areas, comparing how you compare, looking at the graphs and the charts, and then don't hesitate to reach out to Foundational Standards if you have questions about that. So I will also launch our last poll. I will not. Tish, you are an absolutely amazing poll launcher. And if you could launch the 5th poll, please. So what we were hoping to do with this is, what is your biggest takeaway message? And, obviously this is going to produce a word cloud, so the fewer words, the better. But we just wanted to see what people are thinking. What is your takeaway message about what we've talked about today? It can be about how you're hoping to use it. Yeah. So just thought we'd take a few moments just to see where people are at. And I think it's always fun to see how that comes out in a word cloud. And you can do more than one. You're welcome to put in more than one if you like. And as you enter them, it's just taking shape there to see what folks are saying. Okay. I don't know if somebody said that in all one word, snapshots are easier, but it is. I do find sometimes the snapshots are easier to go to, yeah, than all the different options you can in the maps. Okay, great. Great. So I like to see, it's great to see access to data. It's good to see that the maps are helpful. I'm a visual learner. I think that's great. It's nice to see that there's the word evidence and accountability, and that's really great. So I think what we'll do is we'll close that poll, and we'll just wrap up. So this recording will be available for all staff. Actually, if you were around yesterday afternoon, you probably got a few recordings in your inbox. We were testing out the polls and we were testing out breakout rooms. So you'll see the recording for this session in the chat, and we'll also make that available somewhere on SharePoint, because I don't think our hub is the place to save things anymore as they're transitioning everything over. There will be an evaluation coming in the chat right now. It would be really, really great if you take the 5 seconds it would take to complete the evaluation right now. We really wanted to learn about how you liked the session, if you want more, if you liked the virtual, if you'd rather in person, what more learning needs you have around this topic. And yeah, just happy exploring. I hope this was a helpful launch into looking at maps and data and getting your head all wrapped around it and excited for what can come. So just a quick thank you to Mohammed for all that amazing technical data, and Tish, the background polls and surveys and slides. Thank you so much, and really appreciate presenting to everybody today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, that was great.